So a lot of Americans think that everything is just fine here in the States. We're coming back. We got out of the COVID pandemic. But what if the pandemic, the lockdowns, the government control, the stimulus checks, what if it was a plan to get ready for World War III?
As President Biden prepares to address the United Nations General Assembly this morning, Vladimir Putin is raising the stakes. He is signaling a major escalation in the war.
And overnight, Vladimir Putin addressed the Russian people for the first time since the invasion began. In a moment, our exclusive with national security official John Kirby. But first, let's go to Tom Sufi-Burridge on the scene in Ukraine. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Michael. It's a huge moment in this war. A lot of Putin's rhetoric this morning about Russia being under threat was predictable. But the Kremlin's move to annex a large swathe of Ukraine is a major escalation. And make no mistake, Putin is making these moves because Russia's military campaign here in Ukraine is failing.
This morning, in a rare TV address on the war in Ukraine, Vladimir Putin appearing to threaten a nuclear strike against the West. Saying those who are trying to blackmail us with nuclear weapons should know that the wind can turn in their direction. Putin adding, this is not a bluff. With Russia sustaining heavy losses on the battlefield, Putin also now bringing in a partial draft. His defense minister saying 300,000 men with reservist experience will be called up to fight in Ukraine, claiming less than 6,000 Russian soldiers have been killed in the war. Western officials estimating 20,000, with another 60,000 Russian troops injured. And in another major escalation, Russia also moving to declare large areas of eastern and southern Ukraine, which its troops occupy, as part of Russia. The Kremlin planning to stage referendum votes in those areas later this week. The US rejecting Russia's actions, calling the votes a sham. Putin upping the stakes as Ukrainian forces continue to retake ground. Here, Ukrainian troops marching into a village in Luhansk, showing Russia no longer has full control of that eastern region. And in the same area, incendiary shells raining down on a village recently liberated by Ukrainian forces, according to Ukraine's Ministry of Defense releasing the video.
George, by moving to annex a large part of eastern and southern Ukraine, Putin is trying to signal that attacks on those territories will be seen by Moscow as attacks on Russian land. President Zelensky will address the UN General Assembly via video link later, as will President Biden in person. The president expected to deliver a stinging rebuke of Putin's war here in Ukraine.
Now, you probably heard that Russia is planning to deploy like 300,000 men. He's doing like a draft, and a lot of young Russians and older Russians, they're planning to leave, or they're already fleeing Russia because they know that they're dealing with a madman. We really got to take this seriously. Like, I know we go into the clubs, we're dancing, we're, minding our business, enjoying life. We're not in the pandemic anymore. Everybody's free. But what happens if things change? What happens if there's another government lockdown, right? Maybe this whole COVID thing was just a test to see how Americans will respond and our allies will respond. Yes, we're not in Europe, so we might not get hit directly, but we could be permanently on lockdown because of war. Don't think that it can't affect America. Don't think that there might not be a draft in the States and we all have to go over there. Don't think for once. Don't get too comfortable. There's young men fleeing Russia right now. They're leaving. He's freaking recruiting prisoners. He's not playing, bro. Like, he didn't go all the way to Ukraine to lose. He's not playing. He didn't cut Poland's oil supply and disrupting energy in Europe for no reason. I think as Americans, we need to plan. We need to have an emergency strategy in the event if our government decides to create some type of lockdown or anything like that because they are afraid of our safety because World War III. Because in my opinion, this whole COVID thing, it was definitely real, so please knock it off. But it could have been a test to see how Americans will respond. Will Americans comply? But don't think for once we can't be touched. We have serious enemies. North Korea, Iran, possibly China. Who knows? But Putin needs to go. Putin needs to be killed. He needs to be judged for war crimes for what he did to Ukraine. We need peace in this world. But egos, money, power is in the way. It always has been. Prepare yourself, America. Prepare.